My parents handed my sister a check for $100,000. Then my father looked straight at me and said, "You don't deserve any help." The room went silent. Every relative at the family barbecue stopped talking. Even the kids running around the backyard froze for a second. I stared at the check in my sister's hands. $100,000. Not a loan. Not an investment. A gift, and apparently I wasn't worth a single cent. My sister, Emily, smiled as everyone applauded. My mother wiped away fake tears. "We're just so proud of her," she said. I felt my stomach twist, not because Emily was getting money, but because I already knew what was coming. This wasn't the first time my parents had chosen her over me. Not even close. Growing up, Emily was their golden child. If she got a B on a test, my parents celebrated. If I got straight A's, they asked why one score wasn't higher. When Emily crashed her car at 17, my parents bought her another one. When my old car broke down during college, my father told me to figure it out. And I did. I always did. I worked 2 jobs through college. I paid my own tuition. I rented tiny apartments. I skipped vacations. I built my life without help. Meanwhile, Emily never had to struggle. My parents paid her rent, paid her bills, paid off her credit cards. Every mistake she made came with a safety net. Every success I earned came with silence. Still, I never complained, at least not out loud. I kept hoping that one day they would see me, one day they would recognize everything I'd done. But standing there in that backyard, watching my father hand Emily a check larger than my annual salary when I first graduated, I finally realized that day would never come. Then my uncle spoke up. "What about Jason?" My father laughed, actually laughed. "Jason doesn't need help." The relatives looked at me, some awkwardly, some sympathetically. My father continued. "He chose his own path. Let him live with it." The words hit harder than I expected. Because my own path was the only reason I had survived. I looked around the table. Nobody said anything. Nobody defended me. Emily folded the check and slipped it into her purse. Then she smiled. "Don't be jealous, jealous." That single word lit something inside me. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked toward my car. Behind me, my mother called out, "You're leaving already?" I didn't turn around. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to earn their approval. I simply left. That night I sat alone in my apartment, replaying every moment, every excuse, every broken promise, every time they had chosen Emily. And for the first time, I stopped asking why. Instead, I asked a different question. What would happen if I stopped needing them? That question changed everything. Over the next few months, I buried myself in work. I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped chasing people who had never chased me. And something strange happened. My life got better. But while my future was finally starting to take shape, my sister's was beginning to fall apart. I didn't know it yet, but 3 weeks later, I discovered something about that $100,000, something my parents never intended me to find out. And once I learned the truth, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. 3 weeks after the barbecue, I got a call from my cousin Mark. We weren't particularly close, but his voice sounded nervous. "Jason, I probably shouldn't be telling you this." The moment he said that, I knew it was about my family. "What happened?" I asked. There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "That $100,000 wasn't actually your parents' money." I sat upright. "What do you mean?" "It's from Grandpa's estate." My stomach dropped. My grandfather had passed away 8 months earlier. He had always treated Emily and me equally. In fact, he was one of the few people in my family who genuinely believed in me. I remembered countless afternoons sitting with him in his workshop while he taught me how to fix things. He used to tell me something over and over: fairness matters more than favoritism. At the time, I thought he was talking about life. Now I realized he might have been talking about my family. Mark continued. "The inheritance was supposed to be divided equally." I froze. What? Grandpa left money for both grandchildren. My chest tightened. There was money meant for me? Yes. The room suddenly felt smaller. According to Mark, Grandpa had left two separate allocations. One for Emily, one for me. Exactly equal. Exactly fair. Exactly what Grandpa would have wanted. But somewhere between the reading of the will and the distribution of the money, things had changed. My parents convinced themselves that Emily needed it more. Apparently, because I had a stable job and paid my own bills, they felt entitled to redirect my share without even telling me, without asking, without a conversation, just a decision. A decision made by people who had spent my entire life deciding I deserved less. For a moment, I considered calling them immediately, demanding answers, demanding justice. But then I stopped, because suddenly something became very clear. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about who they were, and who they had always been. So I did something unexpected. Nothing. I stayed silent. I let them think I didn't know. And while they continued living their lives, I focused on mine. At the software company where I worked, an opportunity appeared. A startup founder I knew was looking for a partner. Most people thought it was risky. The company was small. The hours were brutal. The future was uncertain. But after years of surviving on my own, uncertainty didn't scare me. Being stuck did. So I took the chance. For months, I worked harder than I ever had before. Late nights, early mornings, weekends, everything. There were moments I questioned myself, moments I wondered if I was making a mistake. But every time I remembered that barbecue, every time I remembered my father's words, I pushed harder. You don't deserve any help. Fine. I would build something without it. Meanwhile, Emily was doing the exact opposite. Word traveled through relatives quickly. The $100,000 disappeared faster than anyone expected. First came the luxury SUV, then designer handbags, then expensive vacations, then investments recommended by random influencers online. One terrible decision after another. Every time someone warned her, she ignored them because she believed there would always be more money, and if there wasn't, Mom and Dad would fix it. They always had. A year later, my startup landed a major contract. Then another. Then another. My income doubled, then tripled. By the end of the second year, I was earning more than I ever thought possible. For the first time in my life, I bought a home. Not a mansion, not a flashy status symbol. Just a beautiful place that belonged to me. A place I earned. A place nobody could take credit for, and strangely enough, my parents barely acknowledged it. No congratulations. No pride. No interest. The silence told me everything. My success didn't fit the story they'd created about me. In their minds, Emily was supposed to be the successful one, the star, the investment that paid off. But reality had other plans. Then things started unraveling. Emily's investments failed. Her SUV was repossessed, credit card debt piled up, personal loans followed. Before long, she was borrowing money from relatives, then from friends, then from anyone willing to listen. My parents stepped in, of course. They emptied savings accounts, took on debt, refinanced their home. Anything to protect their golden child. But every rescue only delayed the inevitable. The deeper Emily sank, the harder everyone else fell with her. Still, nobody called me. Nobody apologized. Nobody admitted they were wrong. Years passed, and then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID made my heart stop. Mom. 5 years. 5 years without a meaningful conversation. 5 years without an apology. 5 years of silence. Yet now she was calling. I answered. The moment I heard her voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. Jason. She sounded exhausted, broken. scared. Then she said 6 words that changed everything. "We need your help immediately." And what she told me next made my stomach drop. "We need your help immediately." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The irony was almost unbearable. 5 years. 5 years without a real conversation. 5 years without a single apology. And now the first thing my mother said was that she needed something. I took a slow breath. What happened? My mother's voice cracked. "It's your father." 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. Was he sick? Had he been hurt? Was this something serious? Then she explained, and somehow, the truth was even worse. Over the years, my parents had drained nearly everything they had trying to rescue Emily. Every bad investment, every unpaid loan, every financial disaster. They covered it all. They refinanced their house. They borrowed against retirement accounts. They emptied savings they had spent decades building. And now the bill had finally come due. The bank was preparing foreclosure proceedings. Their retirement accounts were gone. Their emergency funds were gone. Their credit was destroyed. They were drowning. And they wanted me to save them. I sat silently. Not because I was shocked, because I wasn't. Deep down, I had always known this day might come. You can only reward irresponsibility for so long before reality catches up. My mother continued. "Your father doesn't know I'm calling." That surprised me. "Why?" Another pause. "Because he's ashamed." For the first time in my life, I almost laughed. Ashamed. Where had that shame been when he humiliated me in front of our entire family? Where had that shame been when he gave away my inheritance? Where had that shame been when he decided I deserved nothing? Yet despite everything, part of me still felt sad. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just sad. Because these were still my parents, the people who should have protected both of their children. Instead, they spent decades choosing one over the other. And now everyone was paying the price. My mother asked if I would come over. I agreed. The next day, I drove to the house I grew up in. It looked different, older, worn down, almost defeated. When I walked inside, I barely recognized my father. The man who once carried himself with absolute confidence now looked exhausted. His shoulders sagged, his eyes avoided mine. For several uncomfortable moments, nobody spoke. Finally, my father broke the silence. "We made mistakes." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever heard from him. Then he explained the numbers, the debt, the foreclosure, the loans, the obligations. The total was staggering. Far worse than I expected. Eventually, he looked directly at me and said the words I never thought I'd hear. "We can't fix this without you." The room became silent again, just like that barbecue years ago. Except this time, everything was different. Back then, I had been the person being judged. Now, I was the person holding the power. My father continued. "We need financial help. Need. Not want. Need." I looked at both of them. Then I asked a question that neither expected. "Do you remember Grandpa's inheritance?" The color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened. Neither answered. That was answer enough. "I know what happened." Still silence. "I know Grandpa left money for both of us." My father stared at the floor. "I know my share was taken and given to Emily." My mother began crying. My father looked 20 years older. For the first time, nobody argued. Nobody made excuses. Nobody defended their actions, because there was nothing left to defend. Years of favoritism, years of unequal treatment, years of excuses, all exposed in a single moment. Then something happened that shocked me. My father apologized, not partially, not indirectly, actually apologized. He admitted they had always protected Emily. He admitted they treated us differently. He admitted they assumed I would always be fine because I was responsible, and perhaps the hardest truth of all, he admitted they took me for granted. The room felt heavy. Years of pain sat between us, pain that could never fully disappear. Then Emily walked in, and somehow, things became even worse. She looked stressed, tired, desperate. But instead of taking responsibility, she immediately started blaming everyone else, the economy, her friends, bad luck, investments, even our parents. Listening to her speak, I finally understood something. She wasn't the only problem. She was the product of decades of enabling. Every time she failed, someone rescued her. Every time she made a mistake, someone paid for it. Until she stopped believing consequences applied to her. And now reality had finally arrived. My father broke down crying. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine regret. Not regret over losing money, regret over losing his family, regret over the choices he'd made, regret over the son he never truly appreciated. And in that moment, the power shifted completely. Not because I had money, not because they needed me, but because I no longer needed their approval. That was the real victory. A week later, I made my decision. I didn't pay off all their debts. I didn't write a giant check, and I didn't rescue Emily, because rescuing her was exactly what had created this mess. Instead, I helped my parents create a realistic recovery plan. I connected them with financial advisors. I helped them avoid foreclosure. I covered certain essential expenses, but every condition came with accountability. And no more bailouts. And no more secret loans. And no more sacrificing everything for Emily. At first, Emily was furious. She accused me of being selfish, vindictive, cruel. But for the first time in her life, nobody rushed in to save her. She finally had to face the consequences of her own decisions, and slowly, something unexpected happened. My parents changed. Not overnight, not perfectly, but genuinely. For the first time, they started treating me like a son instead of a backup plan. For the first time, they listened. For the first time, they understood the damage favoritism had caused. Years later, my father said something I'll never forget. We spent so much time helping the child we thought was weakest, that we forgot to appreciate the one who taught himself how to stand. That didn't erase the past. Nothing ever could, but it gave me something I never thought I'd get. Closure. Because in the end, this story was never about $100,000. It was about value, about respect, about knowing your worth even when the people closest to you failed to see it. My parents spent years investing in the child they thought would save them. In the end, the child they ignored was the only one who could. The difference was, I no longer needed their approval.